I want the bets from Betting Weekly, because we win, that is our motto. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't win. Don't give us the bird, don't give us your stink eye. We try our best, and we're successful. Come watch our show. Bet River sponsors. It's time to start. Enjoy the show.
Good day, everyone. It's me, Simon Holden, here on Betting Weekly Live. It's Europa League Day, and what better person to take us through than the maestro, James Eastham. And a great thing for me, anyway, James. This is the first time we've done a show together, so absolute pleasure. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, Simon. Yeah, I was texting a couple of the lads earlier. Steve Wiss, who I often do this show with, was one of them, saying it's our first ever show together, which is amazing, really, isn't it?
It is.
We've been both obviously involved for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to it. Listen, we've got a great card of fixtures to go through tonight. It's obviously the final match day of the group stage of the Europa League. Lots of really interesting games and lots of interesting general talking points on this round of the competition that we're going to be touching on, especially after we had a similar scenario last night in the Champions League with all the drama that competition brought. So let's see if we can have a similarly exciting round of games today as well.
Well, definitely. And first to say, yesterday on the channel was the most successful Betting Weekly Live ever in terms of all the metrics. So a big thank you to everybody who watched, who engaged, and the three presenters, of course, the meat man hosting it, and Nigel, the Bromley Bomber, in those. I thought one of them had joined us now in the yellow jackets there. But a big congratulations to our Hugh Grant lookalike, the suave. I think he's an outsider for the next James Bond. Will White, the Daily Double King, the man. I mean, surely if the people at Amazon are watching, and the new James Bond has not been decided yet, I believe he may be a big price, but I think he'll be shortening all the time. He's done it again. I believe that's 6 on the bounce. No pressure, of course, to you, Maestro, who's in the chair today for the Daily Double. But firstly, I mean, I think it's got to go down as one of the most exciting nights of Champions League. We will quickly come to our business, but a reflection on that. What was the standout for you last night?
Well, I agree with you, Simon. I think it was absolutely fantastic. I know there are mixed views still about the new format for the Champions League. We're still calling it the new format, aren't we? I mean, it's fairly well embedded now, but some people find it quite confusing on the final night because it's very difficult to know at any given time who's got through. And I understand that. There's obviously 18 games going on at the same time and teams moving all over the place, up, down and sideways and all the rest of it. But I personally quite like it. And the drama last night was outstanding, I felt. Some big performances. For me, the takeaway from a betting point of view was really the goals count. Yeah, the goals count was extremely high. I've not cross-referenced it to the pre-game prices on over 2.5 goals or over 3.5 goals, but across the card, be really interesting to look at that and see, whether you would have made a profit, because lots of teams were going for it. That's what we found last night. Some really interesting performances from the Premier League teams. I think that's probably another big takeaway, just how well they did. We were talking just off air, weren't we, Simon, about Newcastle United getting that draw away to PSG. So some big team performances from the Premier League. And yeah, I was a big fan of how it went. So I'm not sure today's round of matches will be as high scoring. We're obviously going to come on to a lot of the fixtures individually, but I genuinely feel that at the moment, the Champions League is the standout of the European competitions in terms of high goals count. So let's wait and see. But at the moment, I'm thinking in terms of goals purely, it might be quite difficult to match what we saw last night in the Champions League.
Yeah, great. Now I'll get the technical stuff out of the way and then we can get on to the bets because that's what everyone's here for. So many of you in there commenting even, not and commentating, some of you, I'm sure. But Stephen Hall, welcome back. I thought you were signing on with Neil Channing. I like that as a gag. He was in front of me, and there you go. That's where I was Wednesday. But I am going to get the technical side of it here. This is, of course, the Champions League's naughty younger brother who comes out to play on a Thursday. It's the final day of the league stage. 8 top teams will go straight through. And that, of course, is where the interest is in the margins. 8 teams go to the knockout phase as seeds. 8 teams will go into the knockout as non-seeds. And 8 teams, James, can look and find some interesting things to do on Thursday evenings because they're not going to be here after tonight. Yeah. And, of course, as we talked earlier, before we start the games, we're going to focus on some key games where we think, or you think, there is some real edge. And I said, like last night, tonight, you've got 18 games stretched out in front of you. If you do not have a strategy, if you do not have a system, if you do not have some discipline and target, this can be one of them, what I call wipeout nights. And it's a little bit like going sailing in a force 9 gale, and it's not advisable. So I want to know from you, Maestro, what strategies, what thought process should we be looking both pre and in game?
Well, it's a really good point about strategy, Simon. For me today, the biggest point of focus to come up with a strategy has been motivation. I think we're on to the final match day, and you can tend to think that all teams that can qualify and haven't yet qualified will be equally motivated. I just don't think that's true with the way this competition structure works. We know it is quite complex. You have the top 8 who go straight through to the round of 16. It's great to have the table up there so you can see where teams are. Then you have 9th to 16th and 17th to 24th who go into the playoff places. The top 8 of those teams, 9th to 16th, are seeded. And then the next 8 are unseeded. The rest, as you say, go home. I'm not sure we can say with any great confidence how motivated teams will be from 9th to 24th to finish in the seeded positions. There's arguably an advantage to being in those top 8 positions of the knockout phase playoff places, but teams have got that many other things on their plate at the moment. You know, there's some big matches involving these sides back in their domestic leagues this weekend. And I think the evidence so far is that 9th to 24th, I'm not sure teams are that bothered about which of the 2 sets of 8 they finish in. They'd obviously prefer to finish higher up, but with other factors going on in their clubs and in their fixture lists, I don't think it's a priority. Now, the top 8 is slightly different to me. I think if a team can get into the top 8 and skip the playoff place round, I think they would take that. So my strategy going into the games tonight was to look at some of those teams who are not yet sure of finishing in the top 8, but can still finish in the top 8. Because I think they're the teams where you're going to get some real focused 100% motivation tonight. That narrows down the field of 18 games, to a much smaller number of games. And listen, we'll wait and see how that goes as a strategy, but I think you do have to be quite calculated and quite strategic and quite selective when it comes to picking teams from a motivational point of view. That's what I've done. So we're not going to be covering every single game in detail. Be very interested to hear what other people think about motivation, because it's not an exact science. We are still sort of feeling our way through this new format. And I think tonight will tell us a lot, actually, about how motivated teams are to finish in a seeded playoff place position. But as I say, I'm slightly skeptical about that. So for me, the top 8 and trying to finish in the top 8 is where most of the motivation will be focused tonight.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And of course, now we're getting near to the point where this competition starts to get very serious, and that prize becomes a realistic, almost tangible thing for these clubs. And of course, this is a competition where the prize is bigger than the event itself. Yes. Right, we're going to look at the first 3 games we've selected, are very key 3 games because they contain James's daily double. So we'll start off with, I'll call them the old Red Star Belgrade for obvious reasons, the Celta Vigo. Now, the old Red Star have been in 1-0 sensational form, have they not, James?
They have indeed, yes. So I'm going to go slightly against that grain with my pick on this game. First of all, just looking at the match prices there, I think they're fair. You've got Crvena Zvezda or Red Star Belgrade, as you say, Simon. They're 11th at the moment in the standings. Celta Vigo are 14th in the standings. Both of these teams can still claim a top 8 place. Red Star Belgrade being slightly higher, I've got a better chance of that. But I think they'll both probably go for it. And yeah, as I say, I think Red Star Belgrade being favourites is fair. My play on this game is actually over 2.5 goals. I think that's worth a look here for a couple of reasons. The first is that, as I say, both teams can still qualify. So I think that that's going to be a factor on this game. And I think the fact that Red Star Belgrade at home are the team more likely probably of the two to qualify means that I think they're going to set the tone by being quite adventurous. Now, you mentioned there, Simon, they've not been a high-scoring team in this competition, and they've not been involved in that many high-scoring games either. So I take the point that maybe some people may not like that. Celta Vigo, on the other hand, all 7 of their group stage games so far have had over 2.5 goals. Anybody that's watched them in Spain will have seen there have been lots of Celta Vigo games this season where both teams to score yes has paid out. So for me, the combination of Red Star Belgrade probably going for it and Celta Vigo being involved in some high-scoring games this season led me towards the over 2.5 goals. I'd have a look at that. It was minus 130 earlier on today. It's going to be minus money, but I think it's worth a look because this, for me, is one of the games where my strategy does come into play, where I think you've got two teams who will still feel, to slightly varying degrees, but will still feel they can claim a top 8 spot. So it's my first pick, and it's on over 2.5 goals in this game because I think we're going to have an open encounter. Obviously, just looking at the price very quickly there, it has moved. It was minus 130 earlier today on over 2.5 goals. It's into minus 148 now. But I would still take that. I think over 2.5 goals is the way to play.
And of course, Red Star, a great example of the league format in this, in that they got off to a wretched start, got booed off, and of course have turned it around and are sitting pretty. So of course, it's a very much marathon, not a sprint, this. So that's the first game. We're going in the overs for Red Star v Celta Vigo. The price has moved, but James thinks that's still worth getting involved in. Now we get, I must put my colours here, that Porto are the team I've backed in the outright, and they could really do with a win tonight against Rangers, who well, apart from self-respect, James, is it going to be a very tough task for the Glasgow team?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the price there is fair, Simon, on FC Porto, who are a really interesting side. They're just outside the top 8 at the moment. They're in 9th place, but on goal difference only. So Porto have got everything to play for here. I think they'll be going hard to try and get into those top 8 positions. And they're facing a Rangers side who are out of the competition already. Now, what does that mean? Obviously, on the face of it means you're going to get almost like a non-performance from Rangers. That's not meant disrespectfully. It's just they've got nothing to play for, and they're doing really well generally at the moment. So you would imagine their focus now turns very firmly back to domestic matters in the Scottish Premier League. I think the only reason that might not be the case here would be that they may want to keep their good run of form going. They're not maybe going to want to step aside and let Porto walk all over them because Rangers are in good form. I think they're on a run of 8 straight wins in all competitions. This is where motivation for me is the big factor, because I think it's very difficult to replicate the motivation you have when there's something at stake, when there isn't. So I see Porto winning here. They've won 9 of their last 10 in all competitions. They're a very well-organised side. And yeah, as I say, motivation for me is the big factor. So it's just a lean for me on this game. Porto, obviously very short to win it. My lean would be Porto minus 1.75 on the Asian handicap. That's available at minus 114. So you would need Porto to win by a couple of goals there to make a profit on the game. They could do that, but the reason it's a lean from me rather than a full pick is that I just feel Rangers' form has been so good that they may be able to make a game of this. I know that sounds a bit odd given that they're out of the competition, But I'm just slightly wary of a Rangers form inside. We had one example last week in Nice, who were already eliminated from the competition, who played really, really well and won for their own reasons. They're trying to put some form together domestically. So that's made me slightly reticent about backing Porto with too much confidence. But they should get the job done. Just a lean from me on Porto there on the Asian handicap to get the win by a couple of goals.
Excellent. Of course, we see with Wolves, don't we, in the Premier League, the old shackles off, the freedom.
Yes.
And I think Rangers now announcing themselves back in a league title race. You're right, with pride. And I think modern day football with social media as well, I don't think teams want to get properly beaten up anywhere, do they? Whatever situation they're in. It's different times now. Right, John,
I think so, and I think I was just going to say very, very quickly there, Simon, on the momentum. I think I tried to put myself in the shoes of the manager here. Yeah, what do you tell your players before a game like this when you're already out of the competition? I think you do say, listen, guys, we're on a great run. He'll be aware of what they can lose if they get beaten heavily. So I fully concur with that. I think, would they take a narrow defeat away to Porto? Yeah, they would think that was a pretty acceptable result, but I think they'll want to avoid a heavy one for sure. Yeah,
I think this could be an interesting game. We will now look at the third game, which is Genk v Malmo. Minus 345 Genk, the tie at plus 450, and Malmo a whopping plus 900. Where are we going here, James?
Yeah, very similar scenario this. And so I'm going in a very similar direction. So Genk, as you can see, they're very short price favourites to win it, minus 345. They are 10th in the standings. They are just 1 point outside the top 8. So I think they're one of the teams, again, who have got everything to play for here. They'll be trying to get into that top 8 so they can avoid the playoff round. And they're facing a Malmo side who are already out of the competition. Similar situation to Rangers in that they've got nothing to play for in this competition. So they're down in 35th. They've actually only picked up 1 point so far, whereas Rangers have got 4 on the board. So Malmo have fared even worse. It is very difficult for me to see why Malmo would be properly motivated here. So it's a fairly straightforward lean from me. I'm going in the same direction. I'm backing Genk minus 1.5 in their case on the Asian handicap. That's available at minus 118. Why would they not get the win? I just, looked at it every which way. I couldn't see a reason why they wouldn't. Their home form's a slight concern. I think Genk are without a win in their last 4 at home in all competitions, 2 draws, 2 defeats. So that's a slight concern. But as I say, Malmo, there's no reason really why they should be taking this game particularly seriously, given that they're already out of it. So I'm taking Genk to win here by a couple of goals. As I say, minus 1.5 on the Asian handicap. It's just a lean rather than a full pick because I am slightly nervous about that Genk home form. It might be one of those matches where they just get the win rather than winning by 2 goals. And you need a win by 2 goals if you're back in the minus 1.5 on the Asian handicap. But same thing as the Porto-Rangers game. You've got a team who have done far better in the competition at home against a team that are already eliminated. For me, it's a fairly straightforward Asian handicap pick on the home team here.
And it's time to reveal today's Daily Double. We got Red Star v Celtic over 2.5 goals and Genk v Malmo. Genk on the money line, which comes to plus 117. Well, you've already explained the logic, but just very, very briefly, James, why that particular double?
Yes, it could have been the Porto Genk double, both to win at home. Obviously, as singles, I'm backing them on the Asian handicap. But if you put Porto and Genk in a double, it was a little bit short. Because they're both very short priced favourites to win it. For that reason, looking for a plus money double, I went with the Red Star Belgrade Celta Vigo over 2.5 goals pick instead. So there's a couple of other alternatives there, but the Genk one, I think, in the double here, when you're picking them just on the money line, you really should get that as a win because as I've said, there's a big difference in motivation there. We just need the Red Star Belgrade Celta Vigo game to turn out the way I hope, which is 2 teams going for it. With one eye on the top 8. So let's wait and see. But I think plus money on that is pretty decent price.
Yeah, excellent. So that is our Daily Double, folks. See, Jason Perlock, you can tell the Europa is the stepchild. I said it was the naughty brother. So we're moving through the family of where it features in the competitions. But one thing's for sure, it will do well to have as many overs. Because one thing I was going to say earlier, producer Troy, who's sadly not with us today, one thing he pointed out last night, at one stage, the 1,000-to-1 accumulator for all games to be overs was nearly on.
Wow.
So that is just an incredible stat. Like James said earlier, we may not see those antics in the goal mouth today. But let's look at our second tranche of games now. And they feature a team who I have, and many, where's Villa fan, all the guys in the chat, everybody who's on at 66-1, 2 places for the title. We do not want any Villa injuries today, James. This is not the only ticket in town, but Villa have had a sensational Europa. They are in second place, 7 games, 6 wins and 1 defeat. They have qualified whatever. But that Emery, James, he's not the type of guy, is he, who's going to want to get beat tonight?
No, absolutely not. And they've been brilliant, haven't they? You've got to say that. There's been rotation, and they've had their fair share of injuries as well. One of the players out tonight, I think Kamara, obviously, and Tielemans and 1 or 2 other people, but they've been terrific. They played some great football. I think it underlines the strength of the Premier League, which is what we saw as well last night in the Champions League. And we should say, they have qualified, but there's this strange little rule which people may not be aware of. But if you finish in the top 2, obviously you've qualified, but the top 2 will get home advantage in the second leg during the knockout phase. So it's UEFA trying to motivate teams to incentivize them to finish in the top 2. I'm not sure about that. I mean, yes, you'd like to finish in the top 2, wouldn't you? But how much difference would it make? How much additional motivation will it add? I don't know. Having said that, Simon, I completely agree with you about Emery. I think they're going to want to get the win here. I think, they've obviously got a goal differential inferiority there against Lyon, who are top, but I think they'll want to win just in case Lyon slip up and don't win, in which case Villa are going to be finishing first. So they've had a great run generally. They've got a great run generally in Europe at home as well. I think they're on 6 straight wins at home in Europe. Yes, we're probably going to see them rotate. And yes, you could argue it's not a priority game, is it, if they've already qualified? But that wouldn't make me back against Villa, because I think, as you've said, I think their focus and motivation under this manager has been terrific. And, without wishing to be disrespectful to Salzburg, I think Villa can rotate, and I think they can have one eye on their next league game, and I think they can still win. I think that's what the Premier League is showing in Europe this season. So they're short money to win it, but I don't have a pick or a lean on it, because, as I've said, any doubts about motivation for me tend to see me put away from the games today. But I wouldn't be opposing them against a Salzburg side who, they're outside the qualifying positions at the moment, down in 28th. They're going to probably go for it flat out because they can still get in the top 24. I just wonder if they'll actually believe they can do it, because they know they're up against a very good team, and they've already got a point deficit of 2 points on 24th, which is where they need to be. So listen, but doubts on both sides. I think it would be a massive shock if Villa didn't win, but in terms of a pick on the game or a lean on the game, it's one for me to leave alone here, I think.
Interesting. Villa fan, oh ye of little faith. I'm not convinced Emery will be bothered, particularly with the injuries. I've got 2 little points before we move on. One is Emery has proved that this is a competition he can win. As a bettor, is that something you take into consideration?
That's a really good question. Yes, I do. I don't prioritize it. I think it's a minor issue, but yeah, I would look into that. I think managers' understanding of a knockout competition is a real thing, and I think Emery's obviously got that. He's got great pedigree in this competition. So conversely, I look at managers who maybe don't understand the competition as well. You can have some managers who are doing a good job with their teams in the league, but maybe they're playing in the Europa League or the Champions League or the Conference League for the first time. I take that into account as well. So I just feel that with something like this game, Simon, where, there's a question mark over how Villa should handle it, how much focus they should put on it, the fact that Emery will have been in this position so many times, in this competition where he knows he's got a game coming up. It's just that experience of having done it before. What you say to the players, how you pick the team, how you maintain the performance level if you can. So yeah, I would definitely take that into account. And I think it's one of the reasons probably they've been doing so well in the competition so far.
And secondly, as a general point, it applies to this game, but it applies to so many yesterday and so many today. When we see previews, when we hear experts, when we hear just the media say a manager of a big club, this is a big club point, is rotating, are we in danger of disrespecting the squad members that are coming in? I say that because so many people go, I was going to bet so-and-so tonight, but I understand the manager is rotating. And then they pull away and the team go and win 4-0 like they would have done with the main team. Can we underestimate these players who are not regulars at massive clubs?
Yeah, completely we can. And I think Villa are a great example of that because, I look at their predicted lineup. Obviously, we look at that type of thing before we do the show, and the depth that they've got compared to the depth that some of the other teams have got. It's just different class, It's not the case, I don't think, for a team like Villa can put out two teams of equal strength. Obviously, they do miss their first choice players when they play. But if you're facing a team, especially who've maybe got 3 or 4 injuries from a weaker league, that can be a bigger impact for the team from the weaker league than it can if Villa were to rotate 6, 7 or 8 players. Because other squads from lower ranking European leagues are just not as deep. And so you can have 2 or 3 players out from those teams and it's going to change everything. So team news is really important. It's obviously very difficult for us because, we're never 100% sure who's going to rotate and how much rotation there will be. So I do understand the people whose general principle is to wait for team news at this stage of the competition. And, I understand that. We're obviously doing our picks before we've got it to some degree. So that's just the way it is. But yeah, I think absolutely we can underestimate just how good some of these bench players, if we can call them that, are, especially for the Premier League sides playing in Europe.
Excellent. Right, let's move on to the next game, Sturm Graz v Brann. I don't know with Bet Rivers, and of course these games will be live streamed. Get on that app, look at all the prices and get involved, and you can watch these Europa League games streamed on the website and on the app. Now, Brann have been a little bit of a mover in the last few hours. I don't know if you've seen that, James.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the price. Well, plus 140 on our graphic there. Up. There's a lot of movement going on today in certain markets with certain teams. It's not all of them. I think Brann have come in a little bit there, haven't they? I had them at plus 148 earlier today. So it looks like they've been favoured. I favour them. It's a lean from me on this game on Brann. Just a lean, not a full pick, but I quite like them to avoid defeat here. I've got them tie no bet, which again, just before we came on, I was available at minus 134. Again, what you're looking at here is potentially different motivation. You've got a Sturm Graz side who are down in 31st. They're out of the competition. And you've got a Brann team who are 22nd. So they're currently not only in the qualified positions for the playoff round, but they've got a couple of points grace. They're 2 points above the teams who are just outside the qualifying positions. What does that mean? I think it means Brann will play for a draw here, or if they don't play for a draw, I think they'd accept a draw because a draw looks like it's almost certainly enough to go through. Plus 148 on a side who, just maybe will be looking to avoid defeat against hosts who are out, I think gives you that opportunity to play the tie no bet. It's minus money, so some people may think it's a little bit short for an away side, but I quite like it because I think there should be enough differential here in terms of how much this game matters for Brann to avoid defeat. I think they've drawn 3 out of 4, 3 of the last 4 in the competition, so they've been fairly solid. They've obviously not been exceptional if they're down in 22nd, but they've been fairly solid. And I think tie no bet, if you are looking for a play on this game, would be the way to go because, again, for me, motivation in a game like this could well be the decisive factor.
Excellent. Right, we have covered Rangers. Now we go to the other half, their bitter rivals, Celtic. Now, interestingly, for all their woes on the road, Celtic have done quite well at home in this, and they face Utrecht. They're minus 240 with Utrecht at plus 600. Celtic, as it stands, if my table will unfreeze, are in 24th. So they really need to be winning this to be safe, don't they?
They do indeed, yeah. And I'm a bit surprised at that Celtic price actually of -240, in the sense that I think they were shorter earlier today. I think they were -286. So it's a bit of a surprise to me they've got bigger, because again, this is a game with a huge difference in motivation. As you say, Celtic are in 24th, so they're in a good position. They're in the final qualifying position, but they cannot afford to ease off because they're just a point above the side directly behind them, Ludogorets, who we're going to come on to. Very straightforward situation for Celtic. If they win, they're going to qualify. They've been in good form under Martin O'Neill. I think they've unbeaten in 5. Since he came back into the job, it's 3 wins and 2 defeats. Playing well. They've just drawn against a very good Hearts side in the Premier League. So I think they'll be up for this. I think from what I've seen and heard from Martin O'Neill talking, I think he's really enjoying the challenge of playing in 2 competitions. Again, we've got a manager there who understands playing in Europe, doesn't he, with Celtic? So why wouldn't he enjoy it? I think he feels he's got the experience to manage the challenge of going for points in the league, in the Premier League in Scotland, to get back into that title race, while also seeing if they can get through here. So it's a really nice game for him at home to an Utrecht side who are already out, who have been poor away from home. They've played 3, they've lost 3. Why would Celtic not win this game? I think they have a great shout to win it. You may want to look at them on the Asian handicap, which is what I've done. It's just a lean from me. Celtic on the Asian handicap with a -1.5 goal start is available at -108. That might be a little bit bigger now, so take a look. But Celtic -1.5 on the Asian handicap, you of course need them to win by a couple of goals to cash. They're more than capable of doing that for me, because I think the momentum they've now got under O'Neill is really good. They're playing better football, and I cannot see a reason why Utrecht would trouble them tonight. It's an Utrecht side who are out of the competition and who've been poor even when they were still in the competition away from home. So very close to being an official play from me. It's just a pick, because I think maybe Celtic will take any kind of win rather than clearing that handicap. So let's wait and see how it goes. But you may also want to look at Celtic. I think, and a lot of people will do this if you're parlaying on the matches tonight, because they're again one of these home sides who are better than the opposition anyway, and the motivation works in their favour as well. So Celtic all the way for me. If you don't fancy the price on them, which some people might think is too short, it would be a game to leave alone, because there's no reason for me here to be anywhere other than back in the home team.
Isn't it ironic that this exact same group of players with the previous manager, and I think you would have got Utrecht at +300. There's nothing that Martin O'Neill hasn't seen in a competition like this, and the difference, the feeling in the chat for Celtic European footballers, everything Grazer 1906, and I can count about 6 Dave Clark Celtic win, is that this is the game that you're feeling is the banker of the night, is the one you can play the Asian handicap. Like James says, you can parlay all the other things you're doing. It looks like with that crowd behind them and the difference in atmosphere. I watched some of the last home game on Sky, our broadcaster here, and I mean, the place was like a cathedral 3 weeks ago. Now it is rocking again. And a European, I think they might roll over the opposition here. I think this could be a real performance. So there you go. Mac Trowbridge was saying something about Arsenal's squad compared to Villa's. I was in no way suggesting that Villa have a strong enough squad. It was a general point about top clubs having players who can come in. So yeah, Arsenal are probably that one team in the Premier League who could chuck out another 11 and nobody would really know that much whether it was any weaker, and they're probably alone in that. It's just a general point about overcorrecting when we hear the word rotate. So just be clear about that. I'm not suggesting Villa's B team are as strong as Arsenal's would be. Right, let's look at the next transfer. We have dealt with Celtic, who everybody seems to get very excited about tonight, and we go to Nottingham Forest, who were in something of a slump, James. There was some, I mean, I don't know about you, we haven't got time to discuss it, but I'll just say one of the most exciting markets and volatile has been the next manager out market, and how one win can suddenly take you out of the running. And Sean Dyche, there was some sneaky money on him, but they went away to Brentford, who were in sensational form, and beat them 2-0. Suddenly Dyche is great again. But This is one of these games where you are unsure about, is it not?
It is, yeah. And again, this is where motivation and the way this league format has unfolded, I'm just not sure how motivated Forest are going to be. So they're in 16th place in the standings, which is a decent place to be. But again, coming back to it, how motivated are teams to be a seeded playoff place team, which is finishing in the 9th to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They're in the final seeded playoff place at the moment. How bothered would they be if they finish 17th, 18th? Again, they won't want to. They'll want to get the win here, but he's got a lot on his plate at the moment, Sean Dyche. Firstly, I should say, I was surprised at some of the reaction to their poor run of form. Yes, it's not ideal, but, I think we're quite quick these days in the media and social media and all the rest of it to question a manager who's not been in the job that long. So in a way, it was good, certainly for him to get that recent win. They should win here if you look at purely the quality of the players they've got. But minus 175 doesn't give you a huge amount of margin. He's likely to rotate. He's been doing that through the competition. They do have good depth, so he can do that. Obviously, the team will get a bit weaker, but can still be competitive. But I just think, they're facing a Ferencváros side who have been really good in this competition. 1-4, drawn 3. We can see they're in the league table, they're 7th, and they are one of the sides who have, for me, got something to play for, because what a great place they're in. They're a point clear at the moment of the teams chasing a top 8 spot. If they can finish in the top 8, it's a tremendous achievement, and it will save them going through the 2 legs of the playoff round. So I think you're going to see a Ferencváros side who have been extremely difficult to play against so far, turning up at City Ground with a really focused and motivated bunch of players. And listen, I'm not saying that means they should be favourites or anything like that, but it just, for me, casts a bit of doubt on the price on Forest of minus 175, given that they've not been lighting the place up recently, and they may rotate. So fascinating match. I think this is one of the games that will tell us a lot about motivation and what teams think where they're kind of like slap bang in the middle of that qualifying zone, 9th through to 24th. So it's one I'm going to leave alone in the end. I think there's, as I say, very little margin on Forest. They're capable of winning it, even if they rotate. So I didn't really want to side with Ferencváros, but Ferencváros have done well enough and troubled enough teams in this competition that I'm just going to leave it alone. Take a watching brief on this and see what we can learn about the 2 sides and how this competition is playing out.
Yeah, certainly the more you spoke there, the more it looks slightly tempting, because you're right. What better prize than saying to a group of players or a club at this time of year when everyone's so hectic, this gets you out of something by winning tonight. To me, that is monster motivation, isn't it? It really is. It's going to be a fascinating angle, that. And you're right. There's so many things tonight that will tell us things for future profit.
Absolutely.
It's a real watch and learn night. It really is. Right. Let's have a look at the other 2 on this section of 3, and then I will tell you about an amazing offer. But we'll do these 2 first. It's Ludogorets Razgrad v Nice. And Nice have been far from a different pronunciation of their word, James. They have had a nightmare. Is it going to get any better tonight?
I don't think so. No, I think Ludogorets are worth a lean here. For me, minus 127 to win. Again, motivation is absolutely huge here. Ludogorets are just outside the qualifying positions. It's a very straightforward situation for them. They're 25th. They're a point behind Celtic, who are in the final qualifying position. You go for it, don't you? Try and win the game and then hope 1 or 2 other results go in your favour. Nice are 33rd. They are already out. And crucially, they have travelled to this game in Bulgaria with a much weakened squad. So their manager, Claude Puel, is really the focus now for them is trying to get away from the relegation positions in League One. They had a really poor start to the season. Claude Puel, the manager, came back to the club in December, early January. He took over. He's been in charge there before. There have been signs of improvement from Nice. We should say that. They've had a couple of good wins recently. They actually won at home last weekend in this competition against Go Ahead Eagles. They won 3-1, even though they were already out last weekend. So there's a risk to opposing Nice because it's very odd to see how well they played last week, sorry, given they're already out. I think this is slightly different. One, it's away from home, so they haven't got that pressure to perform at home. And two, although they were under strength last week, they are even more under strength this week. They've left a lot of their regular starters back in France, with the focus being on their league game back in League One this weekend. So, yeah, I am a bit wary about Ludogorets getting tripped up here by Nice after what Nice did to Go Ahead Eagles last week. That's why it's just a lean from me rather than a full pick. Let's wait and see what we get from this unpredictable Nice side. But in terms of motivation, which is, again, a big factor for me today, it's a very different set of motivation for these two sides. As I say, Ludogorets have got a great opportunity here to get in the qualifying positions, certainly by holding up their end of the bargain by winning. Nice, it's that uncertainty over what we'll get that's a slight concern, but I would have a look at Ludogorets here. Again, just a lean from me, but I think minus 100 and around minus 125. They've been around that price all day and will probably stay there till kickoff against a side who are massively under strength and already out. It was just too much to overlook. So that's the way I see this one. There's a couple of player prop picks on this match, Simon, which, again, we may want to flag up now because I think there's a few comments about those as well. Yeah, this is looking at Nice and taking into account the team news that I've mentioned, the fact they've left behind in France a lot of the players that would ordinarily start. It means that some of the second choice players are going to be starting. There's a couple of attacking players to look out for who may be starting on the wings. The first one is Thiago Gouveia, and the second one on the other side is a guy called Janssen. I like both of these guys in the over 0.5 shot on target market if they start, because they are both plus money in that market. Thiago Gouveia is plus 123, there or thereabouts, to manage over 0.5 shots on target. He scored twice last week in the 3-1 win over Go Ahead Eagles. So I think he'll get a chance to show what he can do again. And I think plus 123 on a player who's just scored twice in the previous Europa League match is worth a look. Janssen, not as prolific, but that's reflected in his price of plus 180. So the evidence so far from Nice since Claude Puel took over is they have been pretty attack-minded in every single game they've played. So even if their motivation isn't sky high tonight, and even if they are below strength, I still think they can get forward and trouble Ludogorets. So have a look at those two players. As I say, Thiago Gouveia and Janssen, they're likely to start on the wings, and they're both available at the moment at plus money in the over 0.5 shot on target market.
Excellent. I suppose those Ludo backers will be saying to you, James, everybody else, that if Nice's top team have been getting walloped week in and week out in this, it does beg the question, where have these players tonight been hiding? But there you go. That is a minor point. So
it's a fair point. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Just a devil's advocate point. Right, Brad Betts Footy is doing a very funny joke. I won't be reading it out. I'm in trouble already, but do have a look at the chat. It's a very funny comment. Right, Real Betis v Feyenoord. Betis minus 167 with the tie plus 330, and Feyenoord, the fallen greats, plus 375. Where are we going here?
Yeah, I really like this game. I think this has got the potential to be one of the more attacking and entertaining games of the evening. So I'm looking at over goals here. It's a lean for me on over 3 goals, which is available at minus 118. I was slightly disappointed I couldn't get over 2.5 or over 2.75 goals at around that price. So it's just a lean rather than a full pick. But I think over 3 goals would be the way to play here, because it's one of the games between two teams I think will be fully focused here. You've got a Real Betis side who are in the final automatic qualifying place. Let's call it that. They're 8th, which would see you go straight through to the knockout phase rather than having to go through the playoff. They're only clear of Porto in 9th on goal difference. I think if you're in the top 8, you're really keen to stay in the top 8. So I'm expecting a big performance here from Real Betis. I think they're going to be one of the sides who you can say with a lot of confidence will be motivated. And Feyenoord are 26th. So Feyenoord are currently outside the qualifying positions altogether, and they're 2 points outside the qualifying positions. So they know exactly what they need to do. They need to win and then hope against hope that other results go in their favour. But I tend to think Feyenoord will still believe they can do it. The odds are stacked against them. They're obviously a very big price to win. You can see there on screen, they're plus 375. But they had a big win last week. They beat Sturm Graz 3-0 to keep their hopes alive. And I think if you've had that big win last week, you're going to go for it this week because they've got that little bit of momentum and they've retained that hope thanks to that win last weekend that kept them in it. So nothing to lose at all. They know they're going to have to produce a huge performance here to get the win they need. But why would they do anything other than go for it? And as I say, Betis, I think, for their own reasons, at the top of the standings in 8th, they're going to be going for it as well. So this, for me, looks like one of the games where both teams are likely to be really focused on attack because they can't really do anything else. As I say, over 3 goals, maybe the line is a bit too high for some people, but I quite like it. I think we will see 3 goals in the game. It may be one of those where you only get your stakes back with the safety net of over 3. But have a look at it. I think it should be an open match between two sides who really have to try and get it won. Minus 118 for over 3 goals, I think, is worth a look.
Excellent. Just an aside, but what a sad indictment of the mighty Dutch league that Feyenoord are scrambling to get a qualifying place in the second tier competition. Absolutely tragic for us Dutch football fans. Now then, Dave Clark has done a parlay. I'll just quickly read that out because I think it's quite an interesting one. Porto, Celtic and Genk. I think that could be not the worst little treble to play tonight. Now, we're going to do the Bet Rivers offer, which is on the tennis. And then, James, I'm going to ask you about in play and how you're going to have a look tonight and do it. So if Night Owl can bring the offer up on screen, it's in the Aussie Open. And, of course, game bet match. We have the best tennis crew in the business, bar none. And this is to get a $10 wager. The bonus code BWA 026. That's BWA 026. That will get you a £10 wager to use on the Aussie Open tennis. Check out where to put that with all the previews. I know Nigel and Sean were on earlier and just everywhere. And Tim Dennis as well has had a fantastic start in the women's tennis section. So if you want tennis advice, you really don't need to go anywhere else. That offer will expire on the 31st of January. So get going. And of course, to repeat that if you bet on these games tonight, you can watch them on the app and on the site in the live streams. Now, that takes me to in play. We saw yesterday that many people with so many games, James, want advice on what to actually do. Now, here's a realistic thing. I told you last night I was only involved with Chelsea, so I kind of weaned myself off everything else. I watched Newcastle PSG because I thought it'd be a good game. I was surprised how well Newcastle played, but we'll save that for another day. We're running out of time. But what I will say is, how many games realistically can you keep an eye on when you've got just a mountain of action?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Not that many would be my answer to that. And I think on the issue of in play, in running, I think it makes it very difficult. I think under the old format where we had 4 teams in a group, you could assess the standings before kickoff and work out which groups had the most at stake, where there were maybe 3 or maybe even 4 teams with something to play for. It just made it easier to focus your attention in narrower areas and pick your matches. In running, I find extremely difficult under this format. I don't get involved in it because it's just so hard to keep track of what a team needs. We saw it last night with Marseille and Benfica. It almost went down to the final kick of the game where Benfica have qualified in extraordinary fashion and put Marseille out. So all of that's happening while there's movement, between 10 and 15, 15 and 20, and at the top end as well. I was watching the Benfica Real Madrid game quite closely. Real Madrid were in the top 8, then they were out of the top 8. If you're just focused on one game like that, trying to keep track on what else is going on, it is very difficult. So one thing I would say about the new format is, for me personally, and other people may say it differently, but it has made keeping a firm grip on in running far more difficult. I think you can trip yourself up if you try and be too sure about what's happening. And the other question is, and this it applies almost generally to football, doesn't it? But to what degree does a team's motivation, or can a team's motivation, change in running in their own game based on what's happening in other matches? I mean, it's very difficult. Maybe it can happen if there's only 2 teams involved in a situation and you get news that your rivals in another game are 6-0 down. Okay, that's a different matter. But can your motivation in your particular game change when there's so much movement? And as we've seen with the league table for the Europa League, not many points between teams either. So it's hard. Other people, as I say, may have a different idea on that, but I think it makes in running really difficult. And I tend to be quite risk averse with that sort of thing. So my view on this type of situation is, if you feel there's a chance you may get something wrong in running and maybe miscalculate what a team needs and therefore how it may change their approach, I tend to just step back and say, it's too much for me, or it's not for me. So it's an interesting one. Seeing a comment there about, bet goals in the second half. Obviously, goals were flying in last night. I have a slight doubt about whether there will be as many goals generally in the games tonight as we saw in the Champions League. But yeah, as you move towards the final whistle and certain teams are running out of time, maybe that will lend itself to more goals. So let's wait and see. But in running for me tonight is not something that I will personally be getting involved in.
Excellent. Now, before we go, I've got a surprise. We have one, and it was a surprise to me. We have one more game to feature. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you reaching for the off button, I need you to pull that finger away, because we have Lille, the FC Freiburg. Of course, I knew we had a game left, producer John. You, ye of little faith. But thanks for reminding me. So, James, an exciting game. So exciting, I forgot we were covering it. But Lille, plus 100. This is going to be one of those games where people think, is this too good to be true? Plus 100, the home side. Should we follow that in?
I'm not really enjoying what I've seen from Lille recently. Their form has been very poor. Anybody that's been watching them in League One will have noticed that they've not been playing well, and they got one or two issues. But they need to win tonight to be sure of qualifying. They're currently in the qualifying positions in 21st, and they're facing a Freiburg side in third who may feel that they don't have a lot to play for. So I was a bit surprised at the Lille price being plus 100. I would have maybe thought plus 120, something like that. But one thing I do like on this game is a couple of player props. So we've seen some comments about that and whether there's any players that stand out for me. I think Lille are offering up a couple of players in the over 0.5 shot on target market that are worth a look tonight, because we know what they're going to do. They are going to go for the win. Whether they'll win or not, whether they'll score or not, is another matter. But I quite like two of their attacking players over 0.5 shots on target. The first of whom is Fernandez Pardo, who is a very quick winger, not a prolific goal scorer, but he did score at the weekend. They lost 4-1 at home to Strasbourg, but he got on the score sheet with a good goal, actually. And they're going to need him to try to get into the same sort of scoring positions. I was a little bit surprised he's plus money, plus 110, just have over 0.5 shot on targets. So I would take a look at him. And the second player is Haraldsson, who is the number 10, plays just off the main striker for Lille. Very good at getting into scoring positions. Clever little player. He's plus 133 in the over 0.5 shot on target market. So they're my thoughts on that game. I wanted to mention Olivier Giroud, who is the centre forward for Lille. He's been struggling for goals recently. He's actually been struggling for chances. So I think what that means is Lille will be looking to one or two of the supporting players in attack, either on the wings or in the number 10 position, to get into scoring positions. I think everybody at Lille at the moment knows that Giroud, he's not necessarily struggling in terms of his general play, but he's not really being found, actually. I'm not sure it's all down to him in good scoring positions. So I like the look at Fernandez Pardo at plus 110 and Haraldsson at plus 133. And that's not to score, that's just in the over 0.5 shot on target market. So anybody looking for a couple of player props, have a look at those two for Lille tonight.
Excellent. Couple of quick fire questions. Any thoughts on Lyon tonight? What a season they're having in this.
Yes, doing really well. They're on an amazingly good run of results. They've been brilliant in both this competition, also League One. Don't have a strong view on them. I would be very surprised if they didn't win, given how they're playing. Again, the question is whether they need to win. They are plus money, I think. They certainly were earlier to win at plus 115, which people might look at and think, what a great opportunity to back a team in great form. Two things I would say about that. Number one, they are probably going to rotate. And number two, the main man now at Lyon is Endrick. On loan from Real Madrid. He was magnificent in the league for them last weekend. He is ineligible, so he's not involved tonight. I'm not saying that means they won't win, but they lose a lot of quality without him. So yeah, plus money is a bit of a surprise given their form, but there are a few issues, I think, on this particular game with Lyon that talked me out of backing them.
Yeah, so be a bit careful there if you think the Leon Arabanca is the word from the maestro. Now, Matt Trowbridge, just very quickly, I'm going to ask that, but a slightly different way. Last night was the night of the overs. We saw Bancroft Wallop virtually everywhere. Nearly every game went over. Let's be a little bit kind of left field there and say, is there an unders banker on tonight's card? I wonder.
That's a good question. I had a look at this earlier, Simon, actually. There's a couple of games that stood out for me in that market. Go Ahead Eagles Braga, I had a look at as maybe an unders game. Go Ahead Eagles are already out of the competition. They're 30th. Well, they're almost out there. They lost to Nice last weekend. Braga are 5th, which is obviously a healthy position to be in. And I looked at the league table and I looked at Braga. You can see they're on 16 points. If they get a draw, they're on 17 points. It's almost certain that they'll qualify. As you can see, there's only Porto who are currently outside the top 8 that would be able to catch them if they got a draw. So I think Braga might go to that game at Go Ahead Eagles and just look to play the draw. And yeah, I think that might be one to look at for unders. But my general view, and I think it's been mentioned, well, people have certainly been chatting about it in the comments. My general view is we are likely to see fewer goals for me in this competition when you add them all up at the end of play than we saw in the Champions League. But let's wait and see. But yeah, there's obviously going to be some games go unders. And yeah, picking them out is quite tricky. But that one for me stood out, the Go Ahead Eagles Braga game, as a potential unders match tonight.
There we are, Matt Trowbridge. I hope that answers it. And quite a few of you have said that in a different way. So kind of merged everything into one question there. Before we go, oh, look at that. This is why Night Owl gets the big money. I hadn't even said it. Incredible. There it is, the Daily Double. His head's going to be that big. He won't leave the house for 3 months. So we've got Red Star. Yes, I'm calling them that still. V Kelter. Over 2.5 goals. And Genk on that money line. Now we know that the great Hugh Grant lookalike did the business yesterday 6 times in a row. No pressure for the Maestro. I have every confidence, Maestro, that this is going to be a mere penalty kick for you to bang in another double. So there you go, folks. That is the Maestro's Daily Double. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I certainly have. We've had a lot to cram in. Now, just a quick apology. I've had so many comments in the chat. So please forgive my rudeness. I'm not as good as Dangerous Dan Roebuck and the Mighty Meatman at doing this. But also, if I had gone through everything, we would never got through the game. So please forgive me there. We do really thank you, everybody who contributes, everybody who chucks a question. Usually on an ordinary night, we can get more in. But I've had to be pretty severe in the ones that I have allowed. So I do apologize. Do keep commenting. This is your show. The reason it's the #1 channel is because of you and how you interact. So we do really appreciate it. It's been great to be back. It's been great to do a show with you, Maestro. Have a fantastic, tense evening, everybody. And again, just a last bit of advice. Work out what you want to do. Pick your 3 or 4 games. Monitor them. And if you miss winners in the other ones, so be it. But do not spread yourself too thin. This is going to be a very exciting night. Now, hang around on the channel, folks, because we've got the PM show with Doug Kazarian. Make sure you check out that. We've got the Premier League show to come out at some stage today. We've got the tennis flying in everywhere in the Australian Open. Take advantage of that offer. And Betting Weekly Live will be back tomorrow. James, we're going to go and just get ourselves ready for an evening of fantastic action. We'll see you again on the European show this weekend, I would imagine.
Yep, absolutely.
Excellent. So thank you, James. Thanks, everybody who's contributed. Thanks, everybody who's watched it. Gamble responsibly. Have a great night. And the show will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Bye for now.